The clink that silences the terrace isn't loud, but it's the kind of note that draws every expression upward. A silver tap against crystal that skates across the stone and binds the evening in place. I'm on the balcony of the barrel room terrace at the vineyard, the valley already settling into that lavender gloaming that makes every cypress look hand-painted. The breeze smells like toasted brioche from the caterers' ovens and rosemary from the hedges. And there is my mother standing perfectly centered by the long king's table. Her left hand posed just so at the stem of a glass that isn't the glass we chose for the champagne. She doesn't need the mic. Her voice is a bell that refuses to crack. "We are all disappointed," she begins, a smile that would pass a health inspection, "that our bride preferred a bargain bottle for the toasts. There are 68 invited. 2 staffers stop moving in mid-pour. The planner takes one half step toward me, a soft intake of breath. And somewhere behind us, a cork rolls under the skirt of an auxiliary table like a mouse looking for a hole. I look at my husband, Adam, who has the kind of calm that doesn't show up until after fires. He squeezes the corner of the linen at his Nia small anchoring ritual I've watched for 2 years. The terrace pinches smaller around my mother's words. A bowl of floating gardenias near my elbow breathes its creamy scent especially hard. 6 feet under the bay lift clean of the evening air. I'm sitting between my college roommate, Noor, and the vineyard's general manager, Lila, who is seated near us by design. We planned everything line by line down to the glassware, stem height, and the clause number that allowed me to choose the cuvee that mattered to me. There is a camera tucked near the bistro light by the balustrade. A second lives in the wisteria. I can feel both lenses finding my face, recording the way I lift my napkin, fold it once, unfold it again. My mother holds up the glass wrong shape, wrong name etched near the base. A prior tasting's leftovers brought from the storage racks because she asked. The label of the bottle at her elbow is polished with the crisp pride of expense. I recognize the foil. It's the champagne she prefers, the one with the aggressive mousse that tastes like loud jewelry. She laughs softly, and a few of her golfing friends laugh with her. At least, she says, we're spared the grocery store fizz. The one-sentence stakes are not lost on me. The story of this night will be told at brunches I won't attend, and in it I will either be the woman who lost her wedding to a snide glass, or the woman who kept the table dignified without raising her voice. My freedom to start a marriage unshadowed by old choreography sits on the rim of my mother's smile. My career compliance in vendor management for a logistics firm has taught me something about binding behavior to paper, about how to pull quiet power from clauses and timestamps. In the next minutes, you'll see how a single contract, a handful of receipts, and the willingness to move gently under a bigger voice can reset a room without breaking a plate. No one at the table notices the little silver envelope by my plate. It looks like a place card holder forgot its job, a slip peeking just past the water glass. It wasn't there 10 minutes ago. Noor touches her throat. Lila glances at the wrong glass in my mother's hand. The planner, Alina, stands just within the shadow of the grapevine trellis, tablet at her side, stylus tucked at the crown of her bun like a hairpin. I can see the apologetic crease already forming near her eyes, though she hasn't yet moved. The air turns soft and cool in that way Napa does at twilight, like someone opening a refrigerator door. Somewhere down the slope, a cricket begins a thesis. I reach for the silver envelope and slide it under my napkin. A breath in, then out, even and easy, like stepping into water. My mother raises her glass higher. She has the kind of wrist that has signed checks most of her life. I told our planner we would need real champagne, she says. Not the domestic thing. A polite titter at the edges. I've heard that phrasing all my life. Refractions of it. Real schools, real neighborhoods, real friends. She loves performance. She doesn't love process. She cannot imagine that process is a stage. The planner's shoulders lift, then settle, like a sail adjusting to wind. Alina takes one step forward, then another, and as she reaches my mother, she does the most professional thing I've seen at any event. She takes ownership and apologizes without flinching. My apologies for the confusion. she says, voice quiet but mic clear. We'll serve what our couple selected, as agreed. The table exhales. The manager, Leela, places a hand on the service captain's sleeve. Pause. We have a new order. A single line slides through me with that effortless, familiar hurt. Seems I'm not family. The smell of cut lemon from the cocktail station zips through the gap as someone opens the side door. Under the linen, my phone buzzes once, then stops. A vibration more felt than heard. Nor doesn't look at me, just taps her finger once on the table. The tiny code we used in college for proceed as planned. The programmed lights over the terrace click on in a soft sequence, pools of gold along the table edges. We look like our best selves. My mother smiles, like someone holding onto a rope. Well, she says, if we must. We built this night the way I build a compliance audit. Begin with a framework. Define the controls. Anticipate what's likely to go wrong. And place the correct pressure points where they can be pulled without shouting. There are 5 named people in this story. Me, Adam, my mother, Carol, Alina, the planner, and Leela, the general manager. Others will pass through by role: the sommelier, the service captain, the vintner, whose family name is on the stone arch at the end of the terrace. I decided the day we placed a deposit that we would seat my mother on the long side, 3 places from the head, so any interruption would be visible and therefore self-limiting. I set the camera angles to catch the 2 intersections where trouble always arrives: the toast and the seating shift. I made sure the contract had a clause that specified the exact champagne by name, disgorgement date, and lot number, and that any substitutions would require written consent by me or Adam, physically countersigned on paper. The Vineyards Council added the word countersigned after I asked. I requested it be initialed in blue ink, so counterfeit would be obvious in photos. The silver envelope under my napkin is heavier than a place card. The flap is slotted, not gummed-on invitation envelope repurposed. The edges smell faintly of perfume, a powdered iris note my mother favors. We're not supposed to open envelopes at the table. Exactly the point. The terrace looks down on parallel rows of vines like neatly written staves of music. The heat of the day has rolled away. What the air holds now is a cool mineral scent and the clean chill of glass. Adam has one knee angled toward me, not touching. The planner flicks her tablet awake, her stylus moving. Lila signals the bar. The sommelier pivots. A server in black shoes and steady hands retrieves to unopened cases of the cuvee we loved in a room that smelled of oak and yeast 3 months and 7 days ago. The foil on those bottles is a shy gold, not brassy. Our choice isn't cheap. It's simply ours. A Metho Champenoise made 6 miles from the room where we signed the rental. Aged on lees long enough that the nose carries a whisper of toasted almond and a lemon curd brightness. It tastes like my first internship in a windowless room when the copy machine hummed like a tired bee, and the only luxury I could afford was a small pastry on Fridays, a reminder that quality is not volume. It's intent. The planner's apology hangs in the air like a ribbon that knows where it belongs. My mother looks at the cases being rolled in and laughs again. Someone on her left says, too brightly, local can be charming. Nor, deadpan, takes a water sip like a person reloading. Lila's radio murmurs at her hip. She whispers back with a calm that makes other people behave. Adam meets my eyes and nods once. Now, in a past life, I learned that when something goes wrong in a warehouse, it's rarely an accident. It's usually the downstream proof of an upstream decision. When a truck arrives with the wrong manifest, it means someone earlier liked a shortcut. My mother is an upstream decision in a silk dress. The first sting came 4 months ago. A tasting day stormy enough to keep tourists away. The light in the barrel room was steady and blue through the high windows. The air smelled like wet slate. Alina guided us through the lineup with the grace of a metronome. Still wines first, then the sparkling. My mother arrived 15 minutes late, already apologizing in the way that reassigns blame to the air. Traffic, she said, as if the sky had aired. She fanned herself with a printed program I had never seen. It had an embossed crest at the top of the crest from her country club, not ours. And she'd written on it in pencil, looping names, tiny arrows from front to upstage to better angle. The first note I clocked, she had underlined Saber Moment and drawn a smiley face. The second she had circled a champagne I hadn't chosen and written real. Alina, professionally neutral, asked for our preferences. Adam described the cuvee we liked: fine beet, brioche on the nose, citrus peel, kind finish. I asked about disgorgement dates. Lila responded with a sequence by memory. 3 digits that placed the bottles in a late winter run. My mother tasted like someone judging color swatches. "This is fine," she said, for the cocktail hour. She turned a glass in her fingers. But for the toast, she named her favorite. "It's what everyone expects." "It's not in the package," Alina said. Gentle but clear. "We can request it, but the per bottle cost." "Oh, please." My mother laughed. "We can handle the difference." Her we meant her, which in turn always meant a ledger I never see and a favor she sees as a leash. I said, simply, "We've chosen and signed the tasting notes." Adam initialed. Alina stamped the revisions to the menu. I asked for the service plan to reflect the exact labels and stemware. Alina nodded and typed. My mother sipped and smiled into the glass like a camera. "We can discuss," she said, which we both knew meant she would act later and call it momentum. The next week, a wire confirmation hit our wedding account. My mother's contribution, which I appreciated, earmarked specifically for floral upgrades. I transferred it into that subledger and sent her the acknowledgement. I didn't spend it on champagne. That was the threshold for the quiet war. 2 days later, I received a string of texts from her friend. "So excited for your real champagne splurge." I didn't respond. I called Alina. "Please lock the beverage clause," I said. "No substitutions without written countersignature from me or Adam, blue ink." Alina added the language and we both initialed. She sent the updated contract, certified via DocuSign, and then hard copy overnighted. Her signature executed with a flourish like a kite tail. I filed it with the other assets: catering amendment, insurance certificates, the county's event permit with its polite font, the copy of our ABC license endorsement for sparkling service past 10. The week after that, a florist we'd never met phoned to confirm the mother's order. Peonies we had not selected. I declined gently and asked the florist to email me a screenshot of the order. She did. The sender's address was my mother's, but the email showed the planner CCDASC. It took me a moment to realize the planner's address was saved on my mother's phone, not by name, but by letter. Open loop. I smiled, a small thing only Adam noticed. The missing item arrived the day after a box of napkin rings my mother loved. Little gold wreaths with pearls glued on like eggs. We'd asked for simple linen folds. The box went into the planner supply closet with a neat label: "Mother supplied, not in use, held at client request." When my mother asked after them, Alina said, "We'll use what's in the service plan." Alina never raises her voice. That's why she gets paid. The locked drawer sat in the vineyard office, an old oak thing with a key that looked like it should open a trunk. Inside, per policy, were the signed copies of all event contracts. Lila kept them there by habit and principle. She likes paper. She trusts it. The drawer would matter later. The contact saved under a letter would too. I promised myself I wouldn't shout. I would use process and receipts. The vow felt like a prayer, but with a legal pad. 3 weeks before the wedding, a box arrived at our apartment marked "fragile" in my mother's handwriting. Inside, 12 flutes etched with my mother's initials, not mine. The stems were tall and thin and wrong. The note read, "For the head table tasteful." I looked at the glassware list in our plan. We had chosen classic tulips for the vintage sparkling, not flutes, and certainly not with someone else's initials. I took photos. I sent Alina the pictures and the plan page, and asked her to log the box with a time stamp and to store it in the venue's back room, not the floor. Alina logged receipt at 9:12 with the service captain as witness. We recorded the serial number on the packing slip. I emailed my mother, "Thank you, but we're using the venue's stemware per contract. Do you want these returned?" She did not respond. Instead, she texted Adam, Don't let her be cheap with the champagne. It reflects. Adam responded with his gentlest no. We're set with what we chose. Thanks. He is precise with valves and pressure. He knows how systems blow. Nora and I spent a late night assembling place cards at my dining table, the paper smelling faintly of fresh glue and lemon oil from the wood. 2 cards were missing in the box of 70. My father's second wife and my father's third. Not an accident. A pattern. I called my father's second wife directly. Will you come if it's clear I want you there? I asked. I'll come, she said, her voice bright as a walnut cracking. I added 2 handwritten cards in my own script and backed them with a discreet sticker so the staff would know they were official. Nor rolled her wrists after 2 hours of calligraphy. We laughed into the lamplight. The missing cards went into a zip bag labeled evidence of subtraction. I'm not dramatic. I just know how nights go when people think they can erase. We ran the rehearsal like a drill. Alina does this thing where she makes a room breathe on her count. Lila shadowed the bar captain to beat behind to catch any improvisation. Adam's parents were sweet and curious. My father wore a new tie and a hopeful quiet. My mother arrived with a new friend whose bracelets chimed like wind. She told Alina she'd spoken to the sommelier. When Alina asked for details, my mother said, "Don't worry about it." Alina worried about it. She had the sommelier's manager certify, via email, that any vendor communication regarding beverage selection must route back through the service plan. We printed the email and slid it into the paper file with a paper clip. The same way you slide a wedge into a door to keep it from shutting. The morning of the wedding broke with fog creeping like a polite cat across the vines and then evaporating around 9. Leaving the sky a blue that hurt. The heat rose, then gentled. Linen snapped fresh on tables. The caterers lit ovens. Butter smell seeped into everything. Leela walked the field with a clipboard like a sheriff. Alina wore sneakers until 5 and then turned into a swan. I clipped a key card to the inside of my dress, a tiny sewn pocket near my ribs, because I wanted to be able to enter the office if I needed the drawer. The key card's matte plastic rubbed gently against the silk over my skin. A whisper that said, "You can open what others close." At 6:23, I watched from the upstairs landing as my mother entered the barrel room with a small squadron. Her club friends. Their husbands. The bracelets that chimed. Someone had switched out the champagne on the sideboard. 2 cases of my mother's favorite waited there, foil, blunt, and loud. The tulip stems we selected had been replaced with those etched flutes. The service captain's lips thinned. He looked at Leela, who looked at Alina, who looked at me. Elena's eyes held the kind of apology professionals carry like a hidden pin. She didn't cause it, but she would fix it. She lifted her tablet. "We'll correct," she said, already moving. The sommelier lifted her chin, a person ready to argue the angle of a sunbeam. Lila, quiet, scanned the room, counting. We hadn't planned to use the cameras until the end. But my mother loves a stage. When she lifted the wrong glass on the terrace and used the word bargain, she pressed the first lever for me. The second lever sat under my napkin in that silver envelope, the one that smelled faintly of her perfume. I turned it over once. The paper rasped against the linen, a texture like a cricket's leg. I slid my finger under the notched flap and pulled out a card printed with the club crest. Inside 2 sentences in her strong hand. "If you change your mind, the real bottles are on ice. Don't embarrass us." I let the lines sit in my lap like a small hot stone. The terrace hummed with those tiny sounds people make when they're trying to pretend a thing hasn't happened. Throat clears, napkin lifts, an extra butter knife picked up and put down again. Alina approached my mother with a small bow of the neck that said de-escalate without saying a word. "We'll be pouring the cuvee the couple selected," she said. That same apology, but with a spine. "I'll put that on the record per the signed plan." Someone laughed in a way that apologized for laughing. My mother smiled and turned to the room like a hostess tossing a scarf. "Let's indulge the young," she said. The procession of receipts began quietly, like a river starting downstream. Alana, this is why you hire her, had already photographed the sideboard when she walked in at 4. We had the picture of the correct bottles and stems. She captured the switch at 6:20, time-stamped with the venue's internal system and the camera's metadata. She emailed both shots to Lila, who printed them on the office printer that smells faintly of hot dust. Lila retrieved the paper contract from the locked drawer, the one with the blue ink initials and the countersignature requirement. She slid both into a transparent sleeve with a red tab. The sommelier's manager, reached by phone, confirmed on speaker that no deviation had been authorized. Alina logged the call time. The service captain pulled the etched flutes from the head table and returned the tulips, placing them with a soft glass bell sound that punctuated each decision. The sound drew eyes. Sound is evidence too. I stood only when I had to. When the first tray of our chosen bottles arrived, beads, fine and steady, a scent like brioche, whispering lemon. I took my glass from the server like receiving a document. My mother held on to her wrong glass as if it were a point. I touched mine to atoms. The terrace lights softened in their housings. The vines below caught the last of the light and stitched it into green ribbon. When I spoke, I didn't raise my voice. "Thank you all for being here," I said. "I have one note for the record before toasts." I lifted my glass, not high, just honest height. "We asked for this wine because it tastes like the life we're building, clear, patient, and ours. That's what we'll pour tonight." The first allies moved like seals on a page. Lila, neutral as a metronome, said, "Per plan and policy, we're serving the selected QV." She nodded to the service captain, who nodded to his team. Alina added, "And we apologize for the inconvenience." She looked to me without asking permission, and the next sentence was a gift. Any deviation was my oversight. I looked her in the eye and said, "So everyone could hear, you're backed. Thank you." She nodded. It's an infinitesimal tightening of the mouth that looks like a person returning to the side of the river where the footing holds. The sommelier poured as if this had been the plan all along. My mother's friends went quiet in a way that changed the shape of their bodies. Adam's father cleared his throat, ready to tell a joke. Noor smiled with her eyes. The room stone wood, glass, light trees, eyes. All I did was let the receipts speak in their own accent. We still had the small matter of the wrong bottles on the sideboard and the etched flutes that would appear in photos if left unattended. I excused myself, a lift of the corner of my mouth that people read as composure because they don't know me at 13. Bending over a kitchen table with a scholarship form, I walked the length of the terrace, past under the string of Edison bulbs and into the cool of the barrel room. It smelled of toast and yeast, the air holding the chill of cellars like a kept promise. I used my keycard to enter the office. The fluorescent light clicked alive with a tiny delay, the hum settling into that background which makes everything sound more intentional. The drawer unlocked with the slow satisfaction of machines with proper maintenance. I removed the contract and placed it on the desk like a Bible, which is to say, with caution and the expectation of witness. On the counter sat a printer with a blinking green light. I pressed copy, the machine warmed side, and slid out a paper with everything that mattered in its proper order. My name. Adams, the Vineyards, Elena's company. The beverage clause. The countersignature requirement. Blue ink initials visible in the margin. I added the photo of the correct bottles earlier and the current photo of the wrong ones. Stapled at the corner. Evidence compiled. I carried it downstairs. Back on the terrace, the air had cooled enough that people were subtly shifting to stand in the light. Noor had taken out her wrap, a red that looked like punctuation over cream. Lila stood by the sideboard, hands folded at the small of her back, a posture that communicates compliance without apology. "We'll remove these," she told the sommelier, indicating my mother's cases. "They're not in the plan." My mother began to say, "I ordered those," and Leela, respectful, said, "And were not authorized." She turned to me. "Would you like me to hold them for pickup or return to sender?" She smiled without teeth, which is the smile of someone following a line. "Hold, please," I said, "and note chain of custody." Lila nodded. The words chain of custody make everyone stand up a little straighter. The silver envelope returned to mind, the scent of powdered iris like a footnote. I slid it into my clutch, then because I know how these stories get told, walked calmly to my mother with the plan copy. "Mom," I said, "this is what we agreed. If you'd like to discuss, we can do that next week. Tonight, we're going to comply with what we signed." She looked at the paper, and her face did a small, strange thing it does only when paper is involved. She isn't afraid of people, but she is always surprised by contracts. She smiled. "Don't be dramatic," she said. The wind lifted, cold as a coin, and the gardenias near the railing breathed deep. "We'll be finished with this in a minute," I said. I placed the plan on the table by her hand. The tiny weight of accountability sat there like a glass paperweight. Then a microscript slipped in public, one of those lines people carry for years and wait to use. "You always were ungrateful," my mother said, but not loud. It slid under the hum. "After everything?" She gestured not toward the vineyard, but toward the years, an abstract shape. The line pricked the air like a pin. I didn't answer the script. I answered the circumstance. "We're serving what we chose," I said, and smiled like a switchboard. People always think the person who smiles is the one who needs something. Sometimes the person who smiles just understands where the switches are. The toasts began. Adam's father told the story of our first date, a foggy ferry ride. Hot chocolate with cinnamon, the way our hair gathered humidity like we were growing new selves. Noor told the story of me negotiating a refund from a landlord who believed in mold aesthetically. The vineyard lights deepened to amber. The citrus zest in the sparkling lifted like a fresh page. My mother sat still, then leaned to whisper to her friend. Alina hovered, not intrusive, present. Lila took the wrong bottles away, one by one, each departure a quiet punctuation. Then the lever I didn't know I had slid into my palm. A waiter, earnest and too young to carry this much weight, approached Alina and said, "Dean," the audible stage whisper of the newly trained. The mother told me she signed for the change. The word "signed" is a drum in my world. Alina turned her head slightly. "Where is that signature?" she asked. She said it was countersigned in the office. His eyes darted to me, then away. Elena's chin lifted. "Show me," she said. The kid led us inside. The office air smelled like paper and lemon cleaner. A clipboard lay on the desk with a prevent checklist. The last line read, "Any on-day substitution, sign and countersign here." The line had been added at my request during the final walkthrough, printed from Elena's template. On the second line, there was a signature in my mother's handwriting. The countersign line was blank. The time box read 6:14 p.m. I felt my blood go cool, not ice. Exactly, but a settling. Alina didn't flinch. She pulled out her phone and photographed the page, ensuring the shadow didn't cross the signature. She took a second shot with the timestamp overlay. She flipped to the previous page, which showed the contract clause. She held both up like mirror and portrait. "Thank you," she said to the waiter. To me, "We'll resolve." We both knew what resolve meant. It meant your facts walk out with their shoes on. Back on the terrace, I let my mother have the floor one more time. "Would you like to say a few words?" She likes to be generous when it costs others. She stood. The scent of the gardenias, now threaded with something savory, the first course being plated. She smiled, that club smile, teeth tidy as a picket fence. "I only want the best for my daughter," she said. She forgets that. People made that sound they think is sympathy. She always wants to do everything herself. It's sweet. She looked at me with a drizzle of pity, then a laugh to show it's only a drizzle. But some things require adults. My face did not move. The air got cooler. The lights warmed. The cameras did their quiet insect work. "Adults read what they sign," I said, measured, like testing a wire for current. I took the clipboard from Alina, who had just arrived, and held it in my hand like a lantern. "Here is the substitution line. You signed your name? The countersign is blank. Per the clause, substitutions require both. That's why we're not pouring your bottles." I looked up, then down, .com as a stamp. If you had asked, I would have declined, but we would have had a discussion. Instead, you tried a process that works only if no one is watching. I smiled like someone who has watched her entire life. Something small but decisive happened to the room. Bodies settled. My mother opened her mouth, then closed it. The ally chorus arrived, not loud, not theatrical, but in that cadence of professionals and relatives who know which note is true. Lila, we're bound by the contract. Alina, steady. We apologize for the confusion. We're back on plan. Adam, a hand on the table, very gently. It's our day, Mom. Shh, nor with the kind of dry humor that unclenches fists. And this wine is not from a grocery store. Soft laughter, the kind that heals the floorboards. My mother tapped the stem of the wrong glass. Once, twice, the sound too crisp. A tell glass sets too hard when someone feels power leaving. She placed the glass down and looked at her hands as if they might tell her what to do. She is good at deciding for others. She has never enjoyed being decided for by paper. The camera in the wisteria caught the way the light shifted on her face, like a map folding. Fine, she said. The word was heavy. Do what you want. People exhaled in relief that sounded like decorum. Adam lifted his glass. To the people who show up on paper and in person, he said. And to the people who learn too. He looked at me over the rim and smiled. The fine bead rose in our glasses like small workers doing their job. We drank. The wine was exactly what we chose. Lemon peel, biscuit, a generous finish that warmed. Without hurry. There's a scent in late evening that happens on vineyard terraces in July, a warm earth. Smell stitched with rosemary. The cooled stone breathing back the day. It's a smell you could build a home on. I inhaled that, then exhaled the habit of being a daughter who has to pre-negotiate her own celebration. It took precisely 3 beats for the next ripple to arrive. The vintner, a quiet man with hands like tools, walked up to our table. We're proud when couples choose our sparkling, he said, the kind of sentence that will hold in court if you need it. It's not a grocery store. It's our family's name. He placed his hand briefly on the back of Adam's chair, then mine. That touch was a stamp. The donors in my mother's circle who sit on boards and know board language glanced at one another. People like them don't like to be tethered to people who scold artisans in public. We ate the butter knives, did the soft slide through halibut. The lemons echoed the wine. Noor told an edit of our worst road trip with the punchline that is safe for family. Adam's father coaxed my father into a shared story that made them both look well. The gardenias were too much. The rosemary was right. A breeze reached under the linen and cooled my knees. The sound of forks resting on plates became the percussion you hope for at a party that will be remembered for its light. And yet the story needed its last clean hinge. I took the silver envelope from my clutch and placed it on the table in front of my mother. "This is yours," I said. "It won't be part of the record tonight. If you want to talk about it later, we can, but not as part of the event." I kept my voice calm. She looked at it as if it were a test she had not studied for. She slid it back toward me with one finger. "Keep it," she said. "It's your wedding." The words were a truce with a barb. Alina behind her dipped her head. "We'll mark the deviation attempt and the resolution," she said later in a soft hallway, writing the report that events like to have when they get audited by time. 2 days later, the ripples began formalizing. The etched flutes were inventoried, recorded, and returned to sender via insured courier. The courier slip had a tracking number that sang with zeros and ones. I printed it and filed it. The wrong bottles were logged, held, and picked up by a club employee who signed a release on an iPad that smelled like disinfecting wipe. The staff had been tipped well anyway. We request that in the plan because people should be compensated for navigating other people's theater. Elena's company sent a letter to all vendors noting that any verbal requests from non-signatories must be politely declined and escalated. Lila updated the venue's policy sheet. Countersignatures must be physically witnessed by a staff member, or the change is voided. The vintner added a line to the tasting scripts about respecting client selections. A sentence that reads like hospitality but feels like a boundary. On Wednesday, my mother phoned. She did not apologize. I didn't expect her to. She wanted her glasses back, not the return label we'd sent. I told her we'd returned them per her last email. She said she hadn't sent an email. I reminded her of the screenshot the florist had shared, the one where she'd saved Alina as C on her phone. Perhaps she'd also saved me as something generically reversible. She exhaled a sound like a match failing to take. She changed tack, asked after the menu, asked if Adam's mother liked the cake, asked if anyone noticed the flowers were not peonies. They were perfect. I said, which was true because they were ours. She said, well, and then she said, I wanted it to be perfect for you. I believe that she wanted it to be perfect for her story of me. I said it was perfect for us, and the line between those two was a fence I could finally lean on without splinters. She went quiet. In the space of that quiet, I heard the deep, distant hum of a compressor or a plane-sim machine moving on. There was one more piece to file. The silver envelope. I opened it again in the late afternoon light of our apartment. When the sun turns the living room into a theater set no one paid for, the card still smelled faintly of her perfume. I photographed the note and saved it to a folder named 07_wedding_anomalies. Then I put the physical card into a box with mementos that matter for soft reasons. Ribbon scraps. The backup vows copy, the cork from the bottle Adam and I opened in the kitchen the night before. Barefoot, pasta, water steaming our faces. That night we cooked again, capelline with lemon and ricotta, a salad with fennel shaved so thin it turned to sweetness. We ate on the balcony. The city smelled like hot stone cooling and someone else's basil. I held my glass up and said, this time only inside my own head. Seems I'm not family. The sentence didn't hurt this time. It sounded like a calibration. Family can be defined. Family can be notarized by behavior. No, I didn't cut my mother out. I did something more radical. I revoked the invisible permissions she thought she held. I filed the boundaries. I executed a new plan where she shows up for what she can do. Well, greetings, anecdotes, a signature dish, and I keep her away from logistics. I recorded that arrangement in an email I sent to Alina, to Leela, to myself. I countersigned it with Adam by cooking dinner together 3 nights in a row, which is the domestic version of stamp and send. I froze the habit of indulging people who sign on my behalf. I audited who received permissions to speak for me. I redacted my presence from spaces where the cost of attendance is my own diminishment. I certified my life. In the month that followed, people called. An aunt who had mastered being gentle said she admired the way I handled the toast. A cousin texted that he didn't know contracts could be loving. The club friend with the bracelets sent a message that began with, I didn't realize, and ended with, I'm sorry, which I accepted without keeping it as a bead. Adam's mother sent photos of lemons on a fence. The vintner mailed us a bottle with a note that said, for your first fight, which is the kind of gift you keep on a high shelf. Alina asked permission to use our night in a sanitized case study about vendor integrity. I said yes, with names changed, because I don't need to be the lesson, only a clean example. Lila updated the staff orientation slides to include a story about a couple who knew how to hold their plan like a compass. People told the story of our wedding the way I hoped they would. The food, the light, the calm. What I will remember is smaller and simpler. The way Adam's hand found mine under the linen and pressed twice when my mother laughed the second time. The silky rasp of the key card against my ribs when I walked down the hall. The sound of glass placed gently on wood. The clean coil of lemon in the glass. The way light looked when the contract sat under it, blue ink initials holding like little doorstops against wind. I'll remember Noor's one raised eyebrow that meant proceed. The smell of gardenias, ultimately too much. The rosemary, exactly enough. I will remember the feeling I had when I said, out loud and in front of people who measure their days in proofs and policies, that we would pour what we chose. It felt like unlocking a drawer that had always been mine. We took a short trip a few weeks later, not far just up the coast, to a place where the mornings smell like eucalyptus and coffee. We didn't post much. We walked a trail that tipped us toward a cliff, and then back, and then forward again. The wind braided my hair until it gave up. We drank something sparkling that wasn't ours and didn't need to be. We talked about our first year, what time the dishwasher would run, whether we'd keep a whiteboard by the door, what folder our future will live in, digitally and otherwise. We decided small things that felt like notarizations. On the way back, we stopped at a roadside stand where a woman sold lemons the size of fists and eggs with shells the color of good stationery. It smelled like dust and sunlight. We bought too much. Back home, we cooked a cake that tasted faintly of the night we reclaimed with lemon zest and almond flour and a crackled top that we pretended was intentional. On an afternoon when the apartment hummed with ordinary work keyboard, kettle. The soft thud of Melly opened my inbox and found a short message from my mother. No greeting. No signature. Dinner, Sunday. It said, I read it 3 times, then once more for the font. I typed, we're available for dessert. Let's keep it early. We'll bring wine. Sen. I chose a bottle that tastes like standing up. At her door, she hugged us with the choreography of someone who knows where elbows go. She didn't mention the champagne. I didn't mention the counter-signature line. We ate fruit over almond cream and spoke about fixed things, whether a nephew's report card, the neighbor's trellis. When she offered to open the wine, I said, I'll pour, and she nodded. A small compliance. Sometimes justice is served with fruit and cutlery. Sometimes it is served by allowing a person to save face as long as they comply. Mercy is not letting someone drown in their own performance if they'll stop pulling others under. There's a story people like to tell about weddings that they reveal the truth of families. I think it's the opposite. They reveal who can work with a plan. They reveal who believes paper is a leash and who understands it's a bridge. They reveal who honors a counter-signature and who thinks a flourish of pen is a god. They show you which rooms will get bigger when you speak and which will shrink. They certify your private rituals. A hand on a knee, a key card near a rib, a friend's nonverbal taps. They notarize your vows in the world's complicated register. Weeks later, I passed by a shop that sells glassware and paused at the window. The light through the display made everything look edible. I went in and picked up a tulip-shaped glass. The stem felt like a pencil. The bowl smelled faintly of the dust that lives in all good shops. I bought 2 and brought them home. Adam lifted one and turned it in his fingers, an engineer admiring a design that distributes pressure well. We poured our cuvee. The bubble chain rose like a well-trained team. We clinked gently and didn't say anything for a while. The air in our place smelled like lemon peel and a clean sink. Outside, someone's dog made a surprised sound at a squirrel. In the quiet after that, I said the sentence once more. Not as a wound, but as a calibration I can put down when it's no longer needed. Seems I'm not family. Then I set it on the mental shelf next to other tools I'll reach for when rooms need resizing. The right clause, the right picture, the right apology, the right refusal. After that, I returned to making dinner and to loving a man who lets me run a kitchen like an evidence room and a life like a well-drafted plan.